All we do is, we get data, we test it. And the tests are going to look very, very similar. We're going to have a set of hypotheses, test statistic, p-value, and a conclusion. Boom. They're all going to look the same. I mean, honestly, from now to the end of the term. What I want you guys to keep thinking about is, what is that data that you've collected? Is it actually valid to test? And should we even take the time to test it? Now, I've been pretty careful in the data I've collected for you guys to make sure that you get good data. But when you go out into the world to actually have these discussions about whether or not you should believe something, ask yourself, how was that data gotten? How was it surveyed? Is it even remotely decent data? Jack, you were going to say something. I saw your hand was up earlier.
You should keep going.
No, I can pause. This is kind of important. I'm going to say it over and over again. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, do you know about the halo around Bend?
The halo around Bend? No.
Yeah. Well, basically, since there's lava underneath,
yes.
It heats the ground.
Interesting.
So it pushes moisture away from Bend, and you can see it on cloudy days.
Interesting.
They come over the Cascades and they'll part north and south. So Redmond, I want to know if they actually have as many sunny days in Redmond. I don't think they do.
I would be interested in that too, because Redmond is about 1,000 feet lower than Bend at certain parts. I'd like to know if that has to play. The thing about the lava, I've never heard that. I found it very interesting.
It's in a book called Beyond Sagebrush.
I find that extraordinarily interesting, but my question is, isn't there lava everywhere in Oregon? I mean, the whole thing's built on volcanoes, except for like maybe the farthest east side, which is more granitic, I think. I could be wrong about that too. Any geologists in here? Far east side, more granite? Like in the Wallowas, for example. The Wallowa Mountains are very, very different than the Cascades. They're more granitic. I think they're granite. It's actually nicer to climb on because it doesn't snap off in your hand constantly. But I'm curious, so what is, I don't doubt this because I've never read it. I have no reason to doubt it. So I'm curious what makes Bend's little, is it because it's in the foothills, in the shaft, I had to explain to my 6-year-old what a foothill was. So what does a mountain have that we have? Like crap, ask it a different way. Anyway, is it the foothills where Redmond doesn't have that?
Well, there's definitely a fault line where the Cascades, dive into each other.
Sure, and that's where we stuck the town,
and
essentially.
It's a certain fault line, I can't remember, but there's lava flows obviously in the Cascades.
Very cool.
Pilot Butte specifically is a lava, that was a lava flow.
It's a dome, exactly.
So there's concentrated lava directly under that, if you think about it.
Oh, okay, so it's more like the concentration of it versus the fact that there's lavas everywhere.
Yeah,
okay.
There's a hot pocket.
Gotcha.
And so it heats the
Well, South Sister has that bulge on it. You've heard about that, right? The South Sister bulge. Okay. On the west side of South Sister, there's a magma chamber that's growing at something like 5 cubic feet per minute or something, like staggeringly fast. Well, it's pointing west. Don't worry about it. It's pointing towards the beam. But I mean, it's an act. Sorry, UOO. Get those degrees wrapped up kind of quickly. There's Mount Hood's active. Mount St. Helens clearly is active. It keeps reminding us that it's active. There's a few extinct volcanoes in the range. Washington's extinct. Fieldston's extinct. South Sister's obviously active. Hood's active. Jefferson, I'm thinking, is extinct. The ones that have kind of a worn-away summit plug are pretty much done. But the ones that don't, like Hood or South Sister, they're still belching. They can be. Broken Top's gone, obviously. Broken Top was the biggest one, I guess, in Oregon until it exploded 10,000 years ago. If you ever got back there hiking around, just kind of take the two sides and go like this, and see where they would meet. And it's amazing how big that mountain would have been. You guys ever been up on the summit rim of Broken Top? It's absolutely gorgeous up there. Just if you ever get a chance and you're okay with heights, get up in that crater and look around. It's kind of like life affirming and amazing looking into that crater and being like, holy crap! Imagine being standing here when this thing blew. Actually, you wouldn't be able to if you get pulverized. Yeah, Rosie.
Can I ask you a question about surveys?
Yeah, please.
When you're making a survey,
yes,
and it's a ranking survey, which I know you don't necessarily like very much.
Careful. I don't like what we do with them.
Right.
I like them a lot.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Is it what makes it a good ranking survey is how we define the ranking? Like being clear about the definition of what that ranking means?
Like 1 through 10, whatever it is?
Yeah, like 1 through 8 or whatever, or 1 through 4, but...
Let me ask a question.
Okay.
Let me ask just a simple question. In your survey, because let's say you have 10 items in your survey, and you want your ranking scale to be 1 to 10. Everybody hear Rosie's question? This is a fantastic question, one we don't test enough in this class. It's kind of outside the scope of the curriculum, but of course, I hear this more than almost any other statistical work in any of your classes where you guys have to design SurveyMonkey surveys and put them out there for folks to do, so I think it's definitely worth talking about. And in one of your homework sets coming up, I'll have you actually look at how to test them, I think, properly. So 10 items, rank, 1 to 10. Are they exclusively ranked? Like, for example, if you pick 1 for one of them, can you pick 1 for another one, or is that then outlawed?
That's out.
So if your number one is your number one and your number two is your number, okay, good. So you've got your 10 items. Pick 1 through 10. So everybody's going to have 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, and so forth. My question is, what do you do with that? I have no problem with that.
Right.
But what are you going to do with that when you're done?
Well, what we did was we surveyed OSU students to find out like what their most important categories were.
Absolutely. This was the one that was.
We just did.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And so we pretty much what we're doing with it is we had 8 questions, and we take the top 3 that people found commonly across the board were their top 3, and then we're going to do another survey to see what options would be applied.
How did you define top 3? Just out of curiosity.
What people define as their like number one, most number ones and most number twos. And
Okay, so in other words, okay, if you could supply, not names obviously or individual, but if you could supply raw data, I would love to have you guys look at that together.
Definitely, I can get it. 'Cause we did
That'd be great. Like in an Excel sheet or something like that. I turn right back around on you guys. So my question is, back to definitions, how do we define top 3? Why'd you guys stop with 3? Just because three's 3?
I think so.
It's a reusable
I'm
number.
not the only one working on it, but I think.
I'm not questioning. I'm not questioning like negative. I'm just curious.
No, I think we just decided that like what we're capable of doing as student government.
3 things is a good number to shoot for.
Right.
8's too many.
Right.
And why would you ask if you're gonna give them 8 and then do all 8 anyway? Why bother asking? Just do all 8.
Yeah.
1 seems a little bit limiting.
Exactly.
3 is what's that? That's 3 is a magic number that'll.
Well, and like also the
song.
funny thing is with moving forward with the new campus, like the administration's number 1 priority
Yes.
is campus safety,
Okay.
which that was one of the options of 8,
Uh-huh.
which was everybody's number 8. That's the least
Oh
important.
wow.
Which is funny because I've put that too, because I'm like, I live in Bend, it's safe, I'm good.
Uh-huh.
I don't need you to put
You
extra.
have to define safe too.
Well, yeah, but,
Right.
it was just fine, like, safety on campus.
I mean, there's ways I would get hurt in Bend that I would never get hurt in Delaware.
Yes.
And there are many, many more ways that I get hurt in Delaware I'd never even think about getting hurt or getting impacted here in Bend. So when you say administration's top concern is safety,
Right.
well, did they come out and say that?
Yeah.
Like this is the thing we're most concerned
That's
about?
one of the things that they're like really focused on, is making sure campus safety is,
Can I
saving.
backpedal a smidge? And I can't find this online, but I was told by at least 2 people that when they were excavating out for the site over off of Colorado, that there were some toxins in the ground
Yes.
from. Okay, so that's a yes. I'm
Yeah.
seeing a nod. Have anyone else heard this?
Yeah.
Continue. I'm curious.
That's about all I've got. Is they found higher than levels of certain toxins when they were excavating
From the landfill.
from an old
On the
landfill.
borderline. Not all
Borderline,
the way.
as in they're almost toxic and not okay.
No. Like along the border of
Oh,
where
of
it
where
meets
they're
the landfill,
cleaning it out,
Not all
okay.
the way through the whole land.
Could you, if you had any documentation of that, I can't find it online, or could you send that to me too with the,
I can ask Becky Johnson.
That'd be awesome.
Who the person is.
right, that'd be great, I'd love to see it.
They found out, they already tested it, and they found out that there is toxins,
Sure,
and that they're figuring out how to treat it.
how to deal with it, okay,
Apparently
gotcha.
they're going to scale the log back a little bit.
Okay, I can't find squat on it, I don't read the bulletin, so I'm sure it was in there. But I haven't been able to find anything through, I'm usually a pretty good searcher online.
We've just been going to the meetings. That's
Say that
why
again?
I know anything about it.
Oh, go to the meetings.
The meetings
Gotcha.
that they're having with like the.
Gotcha. Anything you can send me would be great.
Yeah.
It's curious though, and it doesn't surprise me at all that what one body finds important, another body doesn't. That doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, yeah.
Somebody just sent me over the weekend a very interesting data presentation of what United States citizens think the distribution of wealth in America looks like. Like they asked people, like if you had to take 100 people and distribute this packet of wealth, which is what the United States has.
Video.
It's a little video that somebody sent me. Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
that is.
Yeah, and it's amazing. The perception of what we think it is versus what it actually is could not be more different. Could not be more different. And I haven't gotten a chance to go in and actually look at the numbers and figure out where they were gotten from yet.
Donna showed us that in our class.
It's staggering.
It's
Yeah.
amazing graphically.
It is amazingly graphically, as long as what the numbers that are coming at you are somewhat accurate.
Right.
What do Americans think that?
They think that it's much more balanced than it is.
Much more balanced.
Like they think, for example, that the top 20% of Americans hold a set amount of wealth, which is a large chunk of wealth, when in fact the top 1% holds that large chunk that we think the top 20% holds. So you've got this super rich minority And that's what I want to check. I want to make sure that's accurate. Because the numbers get thrown around a lot with things like wealth and income and earnings and things like that.
Donna was talking about that it was a really legitimate.
We watched on sociology too.
Yeah.
But I need sources, and that's the one thing I haven't seen in any of these. The films are great that they throw out the
She
numbers.
knows a lot about that. She was the one who presented it to us in the first place.
Perfect.
And I feel like she even wrote down who it was that.
Well, I saw who it was that did the presentation,
Right.
and it was slick as hell. It really was, especially the sliding graphics and like,
Yeah.
here's what you think and here's what it actually is, and I'm like, kind of makes me sick inside.
You're like,
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. I just want to make sure that it's legit. I mean, the thing I got on it was a sample of 5,000 they asked. And assuming that was a randomly selected sample of 5,000, I got no problem with that. That's more than enough that we need. But I just want to make sure that what was asked wasn't asked in a leading way,
Right.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing. Yeah, when you click through Gallup polls, click on the methodology links, it's boring as hell. It really is. It's boring as hell. But that's the only way you're going to get to the point of, was anything presented in any kind of unfair fashion? And this goes back to what we talked about before. By the time we get to your data sheets that you guys have in front of you, it's a done deal. I mean, it's just a matter of plugging it through technology and getting a p-value test and saying, yeah, I agree with it, or yeah, I don't, or no, I don't agree with it. So it's interesting to ask the questions about the presentation.
Is it wrong to ask a question if you're like, or I'm doing a survey for freshmen, for OSU dually enrolled freshmen.
Uh-huh.
And I want to know whether or not they feel connected to the Cascades campus. You know, the
Dually enrolled,
Cascades-
like COCC students
Yes.
connected to OSU Cascades?
Yes. So.
Nothing wrong with asking them that. How would you do it?
But my thing is, like, I've been trying to figure out the wording, and what
Yeah.
I started with was, do you feel disconnected? But then I felt like that was leading them to.
Let me turn that question around to you guys. So, do you hear what Rosie's saying? We want to design a survey to find out if the what do they call the cohort students, because we have these cohort students where you have OSU and COCC, and there's a chunk of students that were brand new, coming to essentially both places.
Right.
I mean, the question is, do you feel connected to OSU? I'm assuming, right? No, not COCC,
Well,
but
the
OSU.
Cascades.
Because they're brand new OSU students, so are you connected? What would you ask them to get that data? Would you just simply say, do you feel connected to OSU? Would you just ask them that? That's a great question, actually. Like, for example, Rosie, the first thing she said, I backed up a little bit and said, I feel disconnected to that. What do you think? Give me some thoughts, Justine.
What makes you feel connected?
Okay, good. What makes you feel connected? Give me one thing that might make a student feel connected.
All of the things that they have over there. They have all
Events.
those meetings. They have I was on the street team, so we go to events and we talk to students.
Okay, what kind of events?
Like, we went to Oktoberfest, we were at Summerfest.
Oh, I saw you guys at Redmond. That's right. I saw you guys at Redmond. That's right, at the fair. Awesome, awesome. So public events when you're out and about. That's one way to kind of get a connection. Please.
Advisors that know how to work with schools.
Good advisors that know how to get you successful in both places. That's one of the trickiest things. Amazingly enough, our buildings are yet 100 feet apart.
And
But there's
very
an amazing,
disconnected.
and I'm constantly talking to Danny Cicchini over there at OSU, making sure my business students are going back and forth okay. But I wonder if that's a modal good. So advising, making sure that you're not taking courses you don't need. Good. What else? What else would make a student feel connected? What do you think?
Maybe attending some of the weekly events that they have there.
What kind of events?
There's
Tell me about
been-
these events.
There's been, this is my first semester over there, and there's been times where I've walked in to go to class, and there was like taco night, taco Tuesday or whatever, and
Nice.
pizza for student government, and you filled out a survey trying to figure out how much you actually know about our politics. You take the survey, you get a hot dog.
Okay. So they're collecting data from the students that are walking in the door. Good convenience. Good. So all kinds of little things like that. So what do you think? Would a student get all of that from simply asking the question, do you feel connected to OSU? Jack's shaking his head, then he's putting it going like this. I'm with you too. If you just ask a question like, do you feel connected, you have to make sure that the word connected has a meaning to those students. How many of you guys felt connected in high school? Nobody? Okay, 2 of you. Well, but that's the thing. See what Chris just said? 2-1. That's why you can't just ask a question, do you feel connected or disconnected, because it's 2-1. You gotta make sure, it almost seems ridiculous, and this is why I encourage you guys to click on those Gallup poll links to see the questions they ask. They're amazingly pointed. Go ahead, Caleb.
Maybe a good word would be involved. Like, do you feel involved? And
Okay.
then do you, like, for instance, and then if someone says no, you'd have to ask, well, do you want to be? Like,
Okay, good.
Because maybe someone doesn't want to be involved and doesn't want to be.
Awesome.
Sometimes they just
Could I piggyback a question in front of that?
Yeah.
If that's okay?
Absolutely.
Could I piggyback a question in front of that? What of the following would indicate your definition of involvement with a school?
Right.
So for example, would it be simply going to class? Would it be becoming a member of student government? I'm just throwing a bunch of stuff out here.
Right.
Would it be having childcare available on campus? Would it be, what the hell else?
Attending all the student events and.
Attending at least half of the student events.
Yeah.
Being in at least one club. I mean, have like a laundry list of radio buttons or dialogue boxes you can check off. And then ask the next question, based on your previous answer, do you feel you are involved as a student at OSU Cascades? Boom, and then ask your third question.
Do you want to be involved?
Which is do you want to be involved more?
Right.
See, and that's it. Whenever, the words are great. I love the word connected. I get a feeling for connecting.
I think I changed it to, I just added.
No, Rosie, I think it's a great word.
Included.
No, that's
I think that's
totally fine, but again, even included, connected, involved, I love all these words. You gotta make sure though, if you're applying any kind of statistical measures to these words, that it means the same thing for every person.
Right.
Otherwise, you're taking an average that might be pointing somewhere that's not even close to what you're actually trying to measure. I'm not doubting the word, I'm saying make sure it's defined well. 370 days, it's that again, right? It's 370 days. You ask anybody that's visited them for the past 14 days what they think about that claim. Right? Exactly. Make sure it's defined well. Make sure it's defined well. Then make sure they understand standard deviations. Sit them down, buy a cup of coffee, explain plus or minus to them. That too. Is that fair? Thank you, Rosie. If you give any day you give me, great. Any days you give me is great.
You see the data for the year on how many study days, like define it in class and then get data for it.
For the
Yeah, and see and put it to like.
I'd have to start collecting January 1 for myself, honestly. It's so tricky. I've discovered this. Back in 243, I gave you guys data where snowfall was measured over the course of a year. I gave everybody a data list. I had snowfall from 1917 to 2012. I collected myself the past 4 or 5 years of that data because the guy or the girl or whoever was collecting it for the first 100 years, well, one of them died. But the other one stopped reporting, maybe because he died too, I don't know. But the National Weather Service in 1 year was like, we don't have data from this year. I'm like, holy, what? Like, the guy just stopped giving us data. I'm like, you don't like pay the people to do this? They're like, oh my God, think about what that would cost. I'm like, you're a governmental service, you tax the hell out of us. Pay them. Anyway, so I do it now. And I'm realizing how difficult it is to track snowfall in the town of Bend. Because I'm on the northeast side, which is different than up here on the Butte, which is different than the southwest side, which is different than the southeast side, which is different than the northwest side. So I'm giving you snowfall data based off my backyard and a ruler I've got stuck in there behind the beehives. And I go out there, and whenever it snows, I add that amount to my snow total for the winter. At the end of the winter, you've got another measurement to slap on that scatter plot. But imagine that, and now apply it to the fact that I have to kind of looking at the sky all day long. And then timing what percentage of the sky is clear. Then I have to go to work. Pick up my son from swimming. Keep watching the sky. It's tricky. It's tricky, and it's the kind of thing I've sent numerous emails to Bob Shaw and the weather crew.
It's not just as easy as like, oh, it's not sunny today.
Well, today's not over yet, and it started hours ago. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you define a sunny day, you have to, I mean, basically, how are you defining a sunny day? Is it a day at which at any point the sun comes out? Because at that point, watch till the sun comes out and then stop watching. But is it 70% of the daylight hours are clear? Is it 80%?
For 6 consecutive hours.
Boom! Beautiful. You see what I'm getting at? You see the problem with this? I mean, I think it's a great idea, Chris. I think it's genius, and this is why we get interns to go out and collect data. And I'm glad you're getting paid to do it now, because you have to just watch and observe and measure in some cases. I mean, it's really what it is. It becomes a measurement or observation. But remember, friends, always check that data. Always check that data to make sure it was actually done, and it's not just anecdotal. There's a difference between anecdotal evidence and data-driven evidence. And so many decisions are based off anecdotal evidence or just beliefs, right? Oh, it's great, it's always sunny. I'm like, define it. Define what that means. Good, good. Kayla, go ahead.
What about turning it around instead of saying we have this number of sunny days? I've also heard the quote in Bend, like it only rains on average 36 days out of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So you could do like if it...
By subtraction.
Yeah, well, in the hours of daylight, did it rain today, yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
And that would be much easier than having to sit outside and...
It would be if rainy days and sunny days were mutually exclusive.
That's true. It's not. It's not. But I kind of like hearing that it only rains coming from like the rainy side of Hawaii. I like to know that it only rains on average 36.
Oh, well, by the definition of a high desert, I don't think it can rain much more than
Right.
that. I mean, otherwise we'd be Portland. I mean, we wouldn't be on the high desert side, it would be on the west side. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
But again, inches of rain are easy to measure. Inches of rain are very easy to measure. I've seen this statistic, and I can't refute it, that Bend gets 12 inches of precip per year on average. And a lot of that is snow. Now, the question I have, again, is what are you defining as an inch of precip? Is that 11 inches of snow or a foot of snow? Because roughly a foot of snow, if you melt it down, becomes an inch of water, depending on the capacity, depending on the type of snow it is. If you got Utah snow, you melt down a foot of snow, it becomes about a quarter inch of water. You got Cascade crud, you melt down a foot of snow, it becomes about 3 inches of water. So it depends on how you're defining that too. It's all about definitions.
Yeah.
After you get things defined, then it's just a matter of time of paying people not enough money to go watch it.
No.
I mean, honestly, I think your idea is great. Please realize that nothing, whenever I come back with you guys with more questions, it's not because I'm questioning your ideas. I'm trying to enrich them. That's all. That's all. Because so many things can be turned around. We're smack dab in the middle of this right now. We'll get one more example, and we'll move on to some other stuff. Because there's other stuff I actually have measurements for that we can trust, at least as much as you can trust my son measuring with a tape measure. But we're right in the middle of this online evaluation debate. Online eval debate, right? And it's amazing the anecdotal evidence that flies around. You guys have done them. You've done them for years at U of O or OSU. And now finally COCC, after 5 years of trying to convince it, and we've finally gone to them too. And now people are freaking out because their averages are going down and their response rates are falling. And we're not getting the correct non-response bias allocation. Nobody has proven anything to me that anything has changed from what it was when I made you do them in class versus when you do them online. And then people come back with, well, U of O saw a humongous drop in their response rates. I went to U of O's site this morning and found an entire page where they have 24 at least references showing that nothing has changed at all. But somehow somebody, very vocally, is saying, but it's changed for the worst. You're saying U of O changed for the worst. I see 12.5 responses right here that says it doesn't. That's what you gotta be careful about. That's why I oftentimes sit through these meetings, like kind of like my nails, writing things down. Then I run back and I try to find the sources. If I can't find the sources, I'll find something similar to them or something that counters them. And I come back a couple weeks later and I be like, this is what actually happens. And it's amazing. People usually, if they're reasonable thinkers, will step back and go, you know, I buy that. I buy that. I had an idea. The data doesn't support my idea. Therefore, I've got a small p-value. Boom. Bing. Therefore, I have to adjust my thinking. Because whatever I believed in the beginning doesn't seem to be believable anymore. Now, some people don't think that way. Even in the face of data, they'll hold tight to their beliefs. And that's how we get into trouble. That's how we get into trouble. Data showing you one thing, you just ignore it because you're right. That's where statistics is wonderful. You're trying to discover something. That's why I like what you guys are doing so much with your survey. You're trying to discover what's important out there. It's interesting that it seems to be in direct opposition to what admin thinks. Doesn't surprise me, but it's interesting. So
I just think people more want events and special things. You
it's
know,
possible.
I think students care about student life.
And we can test that, can't we? We can test that by looking at your results.
Yeah.
Yeah. The trick with the surveys, and this is always a trick with Likert scale, when you ask somebody to rank something 1 through 8, suppose somebody really feels strongly that 3 things are all as important as the other 3, but you don't give them the option to actually check 1, 1, 1.
Right.
Then you've got a superfluous 2 and 3 in there that should be 1s but can't be.
Yeah.
And you force somebody to kind of make 1 be more important. That's why I asked that at the beginning.
Right.
Now, I don't know how much of a difference that would make. The only way you could...
The first time I did that survey, I filled it out each individual. And then,
For sure.
And then we were talking about it, and she was like, no, we're supposed to do it ranking 1 through 8.
One-
and I was
exactly.
like, oh.
Well, and that's the thing, is that you might get different results. I can't say that you will, but you might. I mean, the one way to do it is to do it 2 different ways. Generate 2 random samples of, say, size 50.
Right.
And have 50 of them do it one way, 50 do it the other way, and then compare and see if there's any difference in medians, or something like that. Which you'll learn in your next homework set. You'll see how to test Likert scale data with a little less precision, but a little more, I think, validity. We'll get into that.
Can you get the same data doing it both ways? Like, because I was wondering that too when I first went in to take it. I was doing like the 1 through 8 is greatest to least, or least to greatest.
Sure.
And go through and I would put like a few 1s or you know.
Before
like,
they realize that you go in
yeah.
1, 1, and 1, 2, and 1, 3.
Yeah, I asked her and I was like, you get different, would you?
I want to find out.
It
That's
seems
right.
better the other way because because just like you said, there was a few things where I was like, this is stupid. I'm forced to pick something that I feel is just as important, but.
And it's just something I'm thinking, I don't know if it would be like a modal behavior among students. Like I would think that way. Like I don't like being told that here's 8 things and one has to be most important.
Right.
And also, one more thing that came out with Likert scale data is a 1 to a 2 the same distance as a 2 to a 3, as a 3 to a 4, as a 4 to a 5. Numerically, yes, that's the definition of a number line. 1 and 2 are 1 apart, 2 and 3 are 1 apart, 3 and 4 are 1 apart. But what if you're number 8, you could care less about? You don't care at all about 8, but you care very strongly about 1, 2, and 3. Well then, that distance from 1 to 8 should be much, much, much larger than your distances between 1, 2, and 2 and 3. It's almost like a better way to rank, and this would piss people off because we're in an anti-math society, would be like, here's 8 things. Assign using any numbers you want the relative importance of each one. And then you have to develop some kind of standardization mechanism to knock it down to a common set of acts, like a z-score, if you will. Because you have somebody go like, oh, like this is 1,000,000. You can standardize that using their standard deviations of their responses. You could knock it down to a normal distribution and kind of force them a bell curve that way. There's one way of getting around it. I mean, I don't know how you code it in SurveyMonkey. Yeah, you could. You could have open dialog boxes, and you could pay for the premium plan. Have it dump it into a spreadsheet for you, and you can crunch it from there. There, I just solved the problem for you. Thank you. So, but it's not easy, Chris. It's not easy to get good data. It's simple. You guys realize what a good data. It's so simple once you have the data to crunch it. Very, very easy. What's not easy is making sure the data that you're actually putting in is what you're actually interested in measuring. So, thank you. I can't wait to see what you guys got.
I'm curious. You might have already said it, but what was most important, or did you already get to?
Campus life. It sounded like student life stuff.
Special events, sports, stuff like that.
Right.
Big what?
Does OSU have sports?
No, but we do special like trips to.
Oh,
Corvallis,
gotcha. Going to see
city,
games.
go
I
see
gotcha.
games,
Not
stuff
participating
like
in necessarily, but going to.
that.
Gotcha.
We do
But
have-
yes, we
Speaking of which, sorry, Timbers fans.
Something now, I
We
don't know.
got them on 24th.
Baseball club.
What do you want on
We're
24th?
going to nationals.
There you go. Some sports.
We
Yeah,
have
I know, I was
mountain
just gonna
biking
say
skiing too.
There's also, yeah.
Good. I'm just curious. I asked only because of the discussion that COCC is constantly having about sports. Should we have more? We used to have
Isn't there
ski
just
teams. We used to have like varsity level soccer teams. Now it's more like club level and basically kind of like friends get together versus like competing.
COCC's club was up there with U of O. COCC's disc golf club was up there with U of O and OSU Corvallis last year in nationals.
It's fantastic.
It was
It's,
the only
the question is,
competition.
like, what level are they designated at, and therefore can they get more funding for certain things?
Yeah.
Yeah. We used to have ski teams here. I mean, obviously, it's like the perfect place to have ski teams.
Yeah,
It's
right.
great.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
a team.
That's
For
actually
you
starting
guys.
off really good.
Awesome. Get a rock climbing club while you're at it. A few other things, road biking, cyclocross,
Well,
for
there's
God's
the
sake,
adventure
cyclocross.
club, and they do all
That's
kinds
what-
of stuff.
Good. Cyclocross, yeah, get it all together. Talk more about that later.
Fridays at 8 o'clock in the morning.
8 o'clock in the morning?
9.
I'm in the, 9 in the morning.
9 for if you don't want
Damn
it.
it. Volunteering at Matt's kindergarten, I would totally come to. How long do you guys go there for?
Well, that's like our club meetings, but we're doing rides.
Grab me at the break. Hey, Jack, I want to talk about this. All right, speaking of which, we're going to talk about, let's talk about this week. We're smack dab in the middle of hypothesis testing. Getting the data given to you and crunching the numbers. That's really what the course is all about. I like dabbling into the data collection area too because so many students, when they get to the 304 level stat classes, sit down, I have to make a survey? We never learned this in 243 and 244. You're right, you didn't. You didn't. That's kind of what you're doing in those classes. But nonetheless, it's always good to kind of get those things thought about in these classes as you're coming up. I've got an out-of-class exam posted for you guys. I sent an email out yesterday morning, I think. It was posted Sunday night. I apologize. I usually like to, as soon as I post them, send you an email, let you know they're there. It's fairly straightforward, I think. It should be anyway. It's a hypothesis test about seizure rates during full moon cycles that was published in about 10 years ago now in it was Nature Journal, or Bio Nature Journal, or something like that. A claim by some epileptic patients about their seizure rates during full moon cycles. So I'm going to have you guys test the claim, not critique the data. I want you to test the claim a couple different ways. And that's why it's an out-of-class assessment. There's a bunch of whys and hows, and you have to run an Excel spreadsheet to generate a Monte Carlo approximation, which I find very interesting because you'll read all that. So that's not due till next week. That's next Tuesday that bad boy's due. But in class on Thursday, I've got a hypothesis test. The other half of the exam is the hypothesis tests part of the exam. So before we do a quick exam review, which I want to do, what questions do you guys have on either t-testing, one prop z testing, or just the basics of hypothesis testing? I'll put those up here in the corner. So you got intro to hypothesis testing. You've got one prop z testing. And you've got t-testing. What in there gave you grief? Let me fire up the book if you need it. Anything in there gave you grief, whether it's as simple as technology, whether it's as complex as I don't know how to make a conclusion based on the p-value results. What I've noticed at this point in 244 over and over again is when we're in class together and we're doing lots and lots of kind of walkthroughs, you guys totally get it, and then we do something silly like give you 5 days off between Thursday and Tuesday, and then you come back and you may have forgotten a bunch of stuff. Will, question or just a stretch?
Just a stretch.
Oh, sorry, I didn't interrupt. So, I'm always doing that, I'm constantly doing that, I apologize. What questions do you guys have? Anything come to mind? Let me also get this a little longer.
This is a really stupid question.
No, it's not. Go.
That's happened this issue. I'm still really struggling with the hypothesis one.
What to go where?
I am too.
Find me one. Let's do one. Find me one. Grab it out of the book. It's not a stupid question at all. Not a stupid question at all. Find one out of the book. You want a Z or a T test? You guys, your guys' call. Z or T. Doesn't matter to me which one you do.
So Z.
Do a Z. I love it. I'm going to fire that up right now. Population proportion. No, this is fantastic. If we can nip these in the bud right now, thank you, Rachel, thank you, Kaylee. If we can nip these in the bud right now, honestly, right now, everything else becomes that much easier. And here's the beautiful thing. Anecdotally, I speak anecdotally a lot because I've never actually tested any of this stuff in class. I don't know how. What I've noticed is from like week 4 to about week 7-ish or week 8-ish in 244, students feel that way, almost universally. And then by week 9 and 10, we roll right through stuff. The hypotheses become much more clear because you know what to look for in the wording. So not to worry, it will clear. I promise you that. All right, here's hypothesis testing, same portion. Which one in here you want to look at? Which one gave you particular grief? Simple as more than 4 steps, it does. It's true. Go ahead.
I left my book in my car, so I don't have my.
Well, there is no book. It's right here.
Well, it's I have my tablet.
Oh, gotcha. I see. You guys. You left your bookish thing.
Yeah.
So, was it one of these that was giving you grief, friend?
Yeah, I think it was the 9.6.
9.6. This guy right here.
9.6, yes.
Okay, so let's look at 13. This is on page. It looks like 397. I think I have to go to 497. Let's see, it's number 13. Find it close. 11. Oh, 407. Yeah. Sorry. I'm still getting used to the reader in this thing. Page number 13 is down here. Okay, here it is right here. Beautiful. Take a look at that. See if you can extract a claim from that. See if you can extract a claim from that. I'll make it not purple, it'll be easier to see. There we go. Yeah. And make it bigger. But, that is really big, but that's okay. Now, to put your mind at ease a smidge about the hypotheses, for this first assessment on Thursday, I'm going to have it very templatized for you guys. You're going to have to supply certain things. Other things, all you're going to have to do is circle responses. And you'll see what I'm getting at here. Can anybody, now realize, I'm going to try to set this screen up as it's going to look for you on Thursday. So I'm going to try to set this up as much as it possibly can to look just like it's going to look on Thursday. We might need 2 boards, actually. Can anybody see what the claim is based off of that? What's the claim?
The girls don't have a lower birth rate.
Say that again.
Girls don't have a lower birth rate.
Good, that girls, or at least don't have the same birth rate they're reporting, right? Right, Danielle? So if you look up there, sentence number 3, suppose you don't believe the reported figures of the percent of girls born in China. You don't believe it. Now, what I don't see out there are words like you think it's higher, or you think it's lower. It's just that you don't believe it, which means you think it's not equal to whatever they're telling you it is. Is that fair? It might be lower, Danielle, it might very well be lower, but all that claim is that you don't think it's what they say it is. Rosie?
So where would you get the number though? It's not
Hold that thought, we'll get to that. Once we get the hypotheses squared away, we'll get around to figuring out where everything else has to go. But here's the reason I'm asking you to say that is I'm going to have that down here in the conclusion for you already. So I'm going to have you, it appears, does not appear that the percent of girls born in China, right, is not, what is it, 46.7%? Yes. So for this assessment in class on Thursday, I'm going to have that written out for you. And then your job, via this, this, and this, is going to be to circle one of those 2 things based on your data. Is that fair? Make it very descriptive this first time around, promise. Promise. I want it to be. I want it to be because I want you guys to come in not feeling all, Now the beauty of this is you can extract from this what the hypotheses are going to be. Because your claim is actually represented in that last statement. So here we go, H0, HA. Your job, supply, first of all, the variable that we're testing. And what are we testing in this problem? What are we testing? Which, just so you know, it's also given to you in the, in there. What are we testing? Percentage of girls born. I'm going to put that over here in the corner. We're going to let little p equals percentage of girls born in China. Now, I'm not sure, I think, at the risk of diluting the problems down too much, I might leave the definition of the variable off on the exam or give it to you, one or the other. I'm not exactly sure yet, but that's, you have to know what variable you're testing. And there are 2 different variables you'll be testing on Thursday. One is little p. Notice little p is very much smaller than big P. There's a reason for that. We'll get to that in a minute. Little p, and what's the other variable that would not show up in this particular problem? What's the one we were testing on Thursday and also Tuesday of last week? Little
T.
Oh, good, that's the test statistic, but the parameter we were studying was, this is sounding great. There it is, little mu, the population average. We are testing a population proportion here. The percent of girls born in China. It says the percentage of girls born in China, that's what it says, right? According to Oracle Newsweek, the natural ratio of girls to boys is 100 to 105. In China, the birth ratio is blah, blah, blah. You don't believe those reported figures of the girls born in China. That's a population parameter they're reporting. And now, of course, we know it can't be because there's going to be a margin of error, but apparently it's been done on so many individuals, the margin of error is shrunk down to 0. We call it a parameter. But you don't believe it, right? You don't believe it. Fair enough? Beautiful. Okay. So we know these variables, and I'm going to require that you put the variable in there. So you've got to be able to read that problem and realize, okay, it's a proportion. It's a proportion, which is a test of little p. So you're going to put p in there. Okay? Now you got to fill it in. What goes in there? What goes in the null? What goes in the research?
P is equal to 46.7.
Love it! Thank you, Eric. P is equal to 46.7%. What goes here? That's the claim that you're testing. You don't believe it. You claim that it's not 46.7%. You claim that it's not. Laura?
Is it okay if we write it as 46.7%?
Of course it is! Just make sure when you use technology you put it in the other way.
Okay.
Of course, it's totally fine. You know what Laura said? Of course. Write it as a fraction if you want to, whatever makes you comfortable. But just make sure when you put it into your TI, it's going to get pissed if you put a whole number in without instead of between 0 and 1.
Right.
Whatever makes you happy, absolutely. The reason I put that down, the whole reason I put that down is because I want you to have the numbers available and the sign available so that when you go to technology, you know what to put in. So you know there's no confusion of what you're getting right here. That's all I care about. Kaylee, thank you. Thank you, Laura, for that question too.
You said that we have to know that it's a proportion, that it's P, and explain how we would know that?
I'll turn that question back. Thank you for this awesome question. Kaylee asked me a question. That part, and this is really all of it, is when you're going to look at these tests in front of you, you're going to have a proportion and an average, and you have to distinguish between the two of them. So in other words, it's like the worst math class ever, I make you read constantly. You have to be able to look at this block of text and know, let's refocus here, this block of text, and then you have to know, looking at this block of text, it's a proportion and not an average. Give me some dead giveaways on this bad boy, friends. Give me some. Lindsay, help me. We're seeing percentages everywhere. I'm seeing the birth rate ratio is 46.7% girls up there. You don't believe it. There are 60 girls and 90 boys born of the 150. Now that is not expressly telling you a percentage, but it's hiding a percentage, isn't it? 60 of the 150. Well, that's a percentage. We don't know exactly what it is yet, as far as if it's 6/15, which will be 3 7.5, which is below 50%. The question is, I can't do the math in my head to figure out how. There we go. But it is 40%, but it is a percentage.
Okay.
What's not up there, now here's another answer to the question. What's not up there is any kind of measurement. We're not, for example, measuring the girls' birth weights, or measuring their hair length, or measuring, say, the density of the material in their nails to see if they're malnourished. We're not measuring anything like that. We're counting. And that's another dead giveaway, yeah? We're counting data versus measuring data. That's kind of the whole point of P versus mu. P's generally counting, mu's generally measuring, yes? Is this fair? I'm over-answering your question, hope you don't mind.
Nope, that's what I needed.
Good. I think it doesn't hurt.
Was that
Good.
a little P or a big P?
That's a little p, always. Big P is always what? The P.
Probability.
It's a probability, good. We call it p-value. It is the probability. Now, here's where it gets a little bit weird with the English language, though, Daniel. Thank you for asking this. Little p is a percentage. And in 243, we kind of use those interchangeably, probabilities, percentages, proportions, this out of this kind of thing. The big P value is a very specific probability. It's an extraordinarily specific probability. We're going to get to him in a second, and we'll talk about him again. Fair enough answer? Good, thank you. We'll swing over here again, come back to our board.
So one prop Z is used in general to do average.
That's all we're going to do on this exam. Yes, there are going to be more prop Z's to do. There's also something called a chi-square goodness and fit test. Yes. But we'll get into all that as we need to. We don't need that right now. Right now it's just the one prop Z. Yes. Fair?
Measurements.
That counts. T-tests are measurements. We'll take a look at one of each to make sure that you guys can see the difference between them. Go so far? Okay, good. All right, let's put this, actually, let's leave it down. Can I slide this over to there? I think I can. Any other questions about the setup so far? Please, Rachel.
Could we also define that particular problem as maybe a binomial with girls and boys?
Oh, it is! It is binomial. Because if you're either born a girl or you're not born a girl. I mean, that's exactly, that's what this data implies. And that's the whole point. They've made it binomial. Whether or not you believe it should be binomial or not, they've made it binomial. That's what we're going to test. Either girl or not girl. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's, if you remember back, and it's okay you say no, it's been like 4 weeks, or 3 weeks maybe. When we started doing hypothesis tests, we had to make that assumption about this kind of test. Is it binomial? Yes. Yes, it is binomial. It totally is, because you've got two possible outcomes, either girl or not girl. Fair enough? Good, thank you, thank you. All right, now it's time for steps 2 and 3, which is generating these test statistics right here. Okie doke? Good. Let's get that far, then take 5, because I want to put something else on the board, a template that I want to kind of ask you guys on the exam on Thursday as well, and then kick you guys out if you start to get that glazed look. Yeah, Rosie.
I just want to be clear, for us to recognize that this one would be one proxy.
Yes.
Because of the fact that we're giving X and N. And we don't have.
Good, very good. That's one way of knowing. You're given X, you're given N. I wasn't giving you X bar. There's no sample standard deviation given.
Right.
It's strictly counts,
Whereas-
strictly binomial, as Rachel pointed out.
Whereas the t-test, we're gonna have a table, right? We're
Most
gonna have-
likely some kind of data given to you with measurements involved,
Okay.
which will then have a center as well as a spread. There's no spread given here. The spread's built into the center, if you will. Does that kind of make sense? Good. Let's crank these 2 values, then take 5, let that kind of process what the hell they're telling us, if anything. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna go up here now, and go right there-ish. Let's make sure we can see okay. Could you guys kill one of those lights if you don't mind, Harrison? Thanks, dude. We're on tests.
You want us to draw?
I like drawing because it gives you exactly what I'm going to be asking you for, whereas Calculate gives you other stuff as well. They're both fine as long as you know what to extract. I like drawing. I like it because, like I said, it gets you right to where you need to be and gives you nothing else. So stat tests.